The Western comic book industry has been in rough shape, and I don't see it magically changing anytime soon unless companies fire half the creatives they work with and really start listening to consumers. But what I prefer to spend my money on these days is manga, and right now, manga is outselling American comic books like crazy. I have a few different things to show off, but before we get into the topic, if you enjoy the content that I create, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Follow me on social media like Twitter or mine so that you can see when my content is posted. And of course, if you do really enjoy the videos and the live streams that I create, please consider becoming a Dark Titan via Patreon or a supporter via YouTube memberships. Now, this is a brand new CBR article, and I wanted to reference it because it does make some good points. Why Japanese manga is outselling American comic books in the West. For Western graphic novel and comic fans, especially in the United States, there are now two major factions competing on the market: Western comics, such as Marvel and DC, and the vast world of Japanese manga. Every consumer has their own preferences, and there may be no single right answer, but manga does have some undeniable advantages over comics. Now, of course, I still support independent comic creators, but the mainstream comic book industry I've kind of given up on. The Marvels and DCs are not putting out the content they once did. I'm just not interested in a lot of the series they have now. And of course, I still love the major players like Superman and Batman, but unfortunately, the series that are coming out now are just not very freaking good. And I have leaned heavily into manga over the past few years, like many people. It says even in the West, wherever comics are highly mainstream and have been around for decades, manga has started to outsell the former, and there are clear reasons why. Now, when I clicked on this article, of course, my mind went to one thing and one thing only, which this article fails to mention, which we'll get into in a minute, but it starts off with Japanese manga offers better prices and consumer convenience. Of course, there are very big differences from comic books to manga. First of all, comic books are not as long, and while yes, they are colored and you have, manga, which is in black and white, they are very long compared to comics. You are getting a hell of a lot more of the story, and it is better for the price. It says many news sources state that Japanese manga has been selling incredibly well in the West within the last few years, and titles such as My Hero Academia, Demon Slayer, and Jujutsu Kaisen are all appearing on bestseller lists with impressive regularity. Clearly, manga is more mainstream and popular than ever, and on the practical side of things, it may be because of prices and shopping venues. As some fans have argued online, it's simply more budget-friendly to get into manga than American comics, especially when comparing the page count of a product to the sticker price. American comics may seem cheap, but being just a few dollars per issue, but a typical manga volume may have been around 160 to 180 pages, and usually that costs $10 to $12, an excellent ratio for any consumer. I personally would rather spend $10 to $12 to get 160 to 180 pages, even if they are in black and white. I would rather get more story than colorful pages. I do love seeing art in comics, also in manga. Art is absolutely phenomenal, and there are some comics that I pick up simply for cover arts and the art in the book itself, but as a reader, there is a very big difference here. It also says that Japanese manga has a low barrier to entry for new readers. You can find basically any content in Japanese manga, whereas Western comic books are definitely primarily just superheroes. It says another advantage to reading Japanese manga is the very low barrier of entry. At worst, manga suffers from being read right to left, which may be mildly disorienting to new fans, and manga also tends to feature stories with slow pacing compared to comics. Fortunately for the manga industry, its narrative advantages are much bigger, starting with how linear manga is. Any series has one straightforward story, and the volumes go in order of 1, 2, 3, 3 and beyond, it is really easy to get into Japanese manga. And yes, it is a learning curve for people to read right to left, but after a few, you really start getting used to it, and it is worth it, in my opinion. But the major issue that I have with this article is the fact that nowhere mentions storytelling. They're completely ignoring the storytelling differences. Yes, I do think the price point, amount of content, and general accessibility is making it hard for comics to compete with manga, but a big point here is that Western comic books shove identity politics into almost every single story now. Marvel, DC, they've tried safe spaces and snowflakes, women who replace men, new cringeworthy characters like Kamala Khan, and none of them are working. But with manga, well, yes, some stories fall flat. It's only because of storytelling and not because of identity politics. They're listening to their audiences and putting out tons of content that just kicks ass. That is why I love manga now. Of course, though, CBR doesn't mention this because it doesn't fit into their narrative. The woke messaging in comics is something they agree with, so they are completely silent on it here. People don't want to see their favorite characters that have been around 30, 40, or 50 years get race swapped, gender swapped, replaced by a new diverse version of the original they loved, and this is a major part of the problem. And of course, companies have done all of this to please a group of people who clearly aren't showing up to buy these products because they've tried it for years with little to no success. They are making these projects for these sensitive snowflakes, for the people who want DEI initiatives crammed into every page or every episode of a series that they're watching, and these people are not showing up. Of course, we hear constantly about modern audiences. Modern audiences don't exist. While yes, there are people who want the push for identity politics in content, modern audiences are not this new group of individuals who magically popped up 10 years ago. That's just not how it worked. Yes, you can make content that appeals more to the sensitive snowflakes, but ultimately, people who are reading comics, people who have read comics, have been reading them this whole entire time. They just want the same good old content, and these companies are just not providing that to us anymore. And I also have this comicbook.com article I wanted to reference. It's from March. New manga report confirms US sales are on the rise. This is absolutely fantastic to hear, in my opinion. I love manga. I think that it's awesome, and it is great to hear that it is still growing in the United States. And it has been growing for many years at this point, but it is going up and up and up. And I do bet the people in the mainstream comic book industry are salty over this and are worried about this because their readers are being pulled into this new, different, yet pretty familiar medium. And in my opinion, I don't see manga slowing down anytime soon. We've also seen companies adapt manga and adapt Japanese properties and bring them to the West. Companies like Netflix are so focused on all of these live action anime adaptations, which of course were originally from manga. While they are not all successful and we have seen a lot of failures, it does show that they are willing to invest a lot of money into it, and they do see a way to make money in the future. If they can actually make good content. But yes, I do think that the CBR article misses a few beats, of course, because it doesn't fit into their own narrative. And I do think that the storytelling is a major part of why manga is beating comic books. But yes, as you can see, Japanese manga is outselling American comic books. And for me, this is a massive, massive win. But that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this and of course found it important and informative, please make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.